They told me it was temporary. 6 weeks, maybe 8. Just until my hip healed. Just until they could figure things out. Just until. That phrase followed me around for months, like a dog that wouldn't stop barking. That was 3 years ago. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I did. I sat with it in a room that wasn't mine, in a bed that wasn't mine, folding clothes that used to hang in a closet I'd painted with my own hands. 3 years, not 6 weeks, not 8. 3 years of birthdays, holidays, and ordinary Tuesday afternoons that I spent in a place my own children packed me off to with a promise they never intended to keep. But here's the thing, and I need you to really hear this before you decide what kind of story you think this is. I am not here today to tell you how my children destroyed me. I'm here to tell you what I found on the other side of that betrayal. Because something happened in that building, something none of us saw coming, and it changed the entire second half of my life. There's a moment I still think about. It was maybe 4 months in, and a woman down the hall, she must have been 91, 92. She looked at me over her lunch tray and said, "Honey, the ones who put us here think this is the end of our story." Then she smiled, this sly little smile, like she knew a secret. It's not. It's just the part they didn't write. I didn't understand her then. I do now. So let me tell you how a 71-year-old woman with a bad hip and a broken heart ended up building something in that nursing home that not one of my 3 children saw coming, and why, 3 years later, when they finally came back begging me to move out, I told them no. My name is Eleanor. Most people call me Ellie. I spent 19 years in the army, mostly in logistics, moving supplies, moving people, making sure things that needed to happen, happened, even when nobody was watching, and even when it wasn't glamorous. I mention that not because this is a story about the military. It isn't. I mention it because it's the reason I know how to survive somewhere I never planned to be. When you've spent 2 decades figuring out how to make broken systems work, you don't just lie down when your own life turns into one. I raised 3 children mostly alone after my husband Robert passed, when the youngest was only 11. I worked. I coupon clipped. I sat through band concerts and softball games on nights I was running on 4 hours of sleep. I gave those kids everything I had left after the army took its share. And at 71, after a fall in my kitchen that cracked my hip, I gave them one more thing without even realizing it. I gave them an excuse. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my grocery day, and I'd just set 2 bags down on the counter when my foot caught the edge of a rug I'd had in that kitchen for 15 years without a single problem. 15 years, and that Tuesday it decided to trip me. I went down hard. I heard the crack before I felt the pain, which is its own kind of horror, a sound your body makes that your brain hasn't caught up to yet. I lay there on my kitchen floor for 40 minutes before I managed to drag the phone down off the counter by its cord. My daughter Patricia got there first. She's the oldest, the one who's always been what I called the manager of the family, the one who color codes things, who makes lists, who never met a problem she didn't want to solve efficiently. And in the hospital, sitting in that hard plastic chair, I watched her go into manager mode within about 6 hours of my surgery. "Mom, you can't go back to living alone right now," she said. "Not with a hip like this. We just need somewhere for you to recover. Somewhere with nurses, with therapy on site. Just until you're strong enough." Now, here's where I want to pause and be honest with you, because I think a lot of folks watching this have lived some version of this exact conversation. When your children use the word just, pay attention. Just until. Just for now. Just to be safe. That word is doing a lot of quiet work. It's the word people use when they want your cooperation more than they want to tell you the truth. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I was 71 years old with pins in my hip and a body that felt like it belonged to someone else. What was I going to do? Argue from a hospital bed? So they moved me into Willowbrook Senior Living. Nice name. Sounds like a resort. It is not a resort. I want to tell you about those first weeks honestly, because I think people either romanticize these places or they demonize them, and the truth sits somewhere messier in between. The room was small. Beige walls, a window that looked out on a parking lot, a roommate named Dot who talked in her sleep about a dog named Chester that had died, by my calculation, sometime around 1987. The food was the kind of food that technically meets every nutritional requirement and satisfies absolutely nothing in your soul. And the smell? I won't pretend there wasn't a smell. Antiseptic and old carpet, and something underneath it that I eventually understood was just the smell of 100 lives being quietly managed instead of lived. But here's what surprised me. Patricia visited every day that first week. Every single day. She brought me my own pillow from home, my reading glasses, a stack of the mystery novels I liked. My son David called every night. My youngest, Michael, drove 2 hours down from where he lived to sit with me on a Saturday and just watch television, the two of us not even talking much, just being in the same room the way we used to. For those first few weeks, I actually believed them. I believed it was temporary. I did my physical therapy like it was my job, because for 19 years everything I did was my job, and I don't know how to do things halfway. I walked the hallway with my walker every morning and every evening. I told the therapist, a patient young man named Terrence, that I wanted to be walking without assistance by month 2. I hit that goal. Month 2, I was walking the halls with just a cane, and that's when the visits started to change. It's a strange thing, watching people you love pull away from you in slow motion. It's not one dramatic moment. Nobody sits you down and says, "We've decided not to come back." It happens in inches. Patricia's daily visits became every other day, then twice a week, then Sunday afternoons, and even those started running short. 20 minutes instead of an hour, her phone buzzing the whole time with things at work that apparently couldn't wait 45 minutes for her mother. David's nightly calls became every few nights, then weekly, then a text message that said, "Thinking of you, Mom, crazy week," more often than an actual voice on the line. And Michael, my Michael, the one who drove 2 hours to sit and watch television with me, Michael I didn't see for 11 weeks straight after that Saturday. 11 weeks. I counted, because counting was the only thing I had control over. I want to tell you something that I think a lot of people in this situation are too proud or too hurt to admit. I made excuses for them. I told Dot. I told Terrence the therapist. I told myself, over and over, they're busy, they have jobs, they have their own children. This is just a season. I built a whole cathedral of excuses in my mind, because the alternative, that my own children were quietly, gently, letting me become someone else's responsibility, was too heavy a thing to hold. Here's a hard truth I've learned since then. One I'll say plainly, because somebody needs to say it plainly. Guilt is a terrible glue. It might hold a family together on paper, in a group chat, in the obligatory Christmas Day phone call, but it does not hold a family together in any way that actually feeds a person. And by month 5 in that building, I understood, in the quiet of my own chest, at 2 in the morning when Dot was murmuring to a dog long gone, that I had been quietly moved from our mother to a situation being handled. That is a cold thing to realize about your own children. But it is not, and I promise you this, it is not the end of the story. Somewhere around month 6, something in me shifted. Not all at once, more like a tide going out, slow and steady, until one day I looked up and the whole shoreline had changed. I stopped waiting by the window on Sunday afternoons. Instead, I started paying attention to the people actually in the room with me, and once I really looked, I realized Willowbrook was full of people just like me. People who'd raised families, run households, worked jobs, survived things. People whose stories had been quietly filed under elderly resident instead of person who used to run a bakery for 30 years, or person who used to be a school teacher, or, in the case of a gentleman named Walter 2 doors down, person who used to fly cargo planes over 3 continents. We were a room full of forgotten resumes. And I thought, this is going to sound strange, but stay with me. I thought about logistics. I thought about my old job in the army, how the whole point of my work was taking a mess of disconnected pieces and turning them into something that moved, something that functioned, something with purpose. I looked around that dining hall one Tuesday, at all these people staring at trays of overcooked green beans with nothing to do and nowhere to be, and I thought, this is the most inefficient use of human wisdom I have ever seen in my life. So I did what I know how to do. I organized something. I started small. I asked the activities coordinator, a tired young woman named Brianna, who was clearly juggling far more than one person should, if I could run a Tuesday afternoon group. Not bingo, not another movie nobody picked. I wanted to start what I called, only half joking, the Willowbrook War Room, a group where residents came together and actually solved something. Anything. A crossword nobody could crack. A letter someone wanted help writing to a grandchild. A complaint to the county about the broken sidewalk out front that had already tripped 2 people. 6 residents showed up the first week. By month 3, we had 22. I won't pretend this turned into some fairy tale overnight, because it didn't. But something real started happening in that building, and I was, for the first time since my hip cracked on that kitchen floor, not a situation being handled. I was somebody doing the handling. Walter, the old cargo pilot, started teaching a Thursday session on basic home repairs, because it turned out half the building didn't know how to fix a leaky faucet or a wobbly chair leg, and Walter, at 84, still did. My roommate, the one who talked to a dog 30 years gone, turned out to have been a seamstress her entire working life, and she started mending clothes for residents whose families never thought to bring them new ones. A woman named Corinne, who'd been a legal secretary for 4 decades, started helping people understand their own paperwork, the forms nobody explained, the fine print nobody read to them. We weren't waiting for our families to remember us anymore. We were remembering ourselves. I got the sidewalk fixed, by the way. Took 11 months and 4 letters to the county, but I got it fixed. There's something about being 70-something and still capable of making a bureaucracy blink that puts a particular kind of fire back in a person's chest. And here's the part I think matters most, the part I want anyone listening to really carry with them. I did not stop loving my children during any of this, not for one single day. But I stopped waiting for their love to be the only proof that my life still had value. Those are 2 different things, and for a long time I had them tangled together like fishing line in a tackle box. Untangling them was the hardest, most necessary work I've done since basic training. 2 years and 8 months after I moved into Willowbrook, Patricia showed up on a Wednesday, not a Sunday. A Wednesday, which told me right away this wasn't routine. She sat across from me in the community room, the same room where, by then, I ran 2 groups a week and had a waiting list for the war room, and she said, "Mom, we think it's time. We found a place, a little apartment, close to David. You could come stay near family again." Near family again, as if I hadn't spent nearly 3 years in a building full of people who'd become exactly that. I looked at my daughter. This woman I raised on my own after her father died. This woman who used to fall asleep on my chest as a baby. And I felt something I didn't expect to feel. Not anger. Grief, maybe. And underneath the grief, something surprisingly close to peace. Patricia, I said, I appreciate that. I do. But I'm not ready to leave. She blinked at me like I'd spoken in another language. Mom, this was supposed to be temporary. You've been asking to go home for months. I asked to go home for months, I told her, when I thought home was still where I mattered. It isn't anymore. Not the way it used to be. But this place. I built something here. People need me here. I have a job to do. I watched my daughter's face do something complicated. Guilt, maybe. Finally catching up with 3 years of distance. Or maybe just surprised that her mother, the situation, had quietly become somebody with a full calendar and other people counting on her. She didn't understand it that day. I'm not sure she fully understands it now. But she comes on Wednesdays regularly since then, not because she has to manage a situation, because, I think, she's slowly getting curious about who her mother turned out to be when nobody was watching. I think about that woman down the hall sometimes, the one who told me the ones who put us here think this is the end of our story. She passed about a year ago, peacefully, in her sleep, surrounded by more people from the war room than actual blood relatives. I gave a few words at her memorial, and I found myself saying something I hadn't planned, that the cruelest lie we tell older people isn't that they're a burden, it's that their story is basically over once somebody else decides where they live. It isn't. I'm the proof. If you're watching this, and you're sitting somewhere you didn't choose, a facility, a spare bedroom in someone else's house, a life that got smaller than you wanted it to be, I want you to hear this clearly. Being placed somewhere is not the same thing as being finished. Your hands still work. Your mind still has things worth building with it. Somebody down whatever hallway you're in right now is waiting for someone to organize a Tuesday afternoon, to fix a sidewalk, to mend a coat, to remind them their resume didn't end the day their family stopped visiting. 3 years ago, my children packed me into a building and called it temporary. 3 years later, I'm still here. Not because nobody wants me, because I finally figured out I didn't need permission to matter. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me about a time you had to build something out of a place you never chose. And if you know somebody who needs to hear that their story isn't over yet, send this their way.